All right, welcome everybody to our 13th episode of Marshall Way Network TV. And this is your host, Vishan Borich. And I'm here today with a very special and esteemed council member on the Marshall Way Network board. And that is Mr. Richard Osborne Jr., who is an 8th Dan or 8th degree in Taekwondo. He is a master instructor, but not only that, and this is what really impresses me, he puts on an incredible tournament every year called the Ozark Mountain Nationals. And we're going to be asking questions of him today because I know there's a lot of you out there who are martial arts instructors all over the world. Some of you have really expressed interest in, how do you even go about hosting your own martial arts tournament or event for that matter. So today, Mr. Osborne is going to be sharing the secret to hosting martial arts tournaments. So I'm going to hand it here so we can see his face. There he is. So I know that you just wrapped up the most recent Ozark Mountain National Tournament here for 2016. Now, what year is this? Was this your 6th year?
6th year, yes, it was.
Wow, it seems like only yesterday that you had your first one, and I really want to say that our school is one of them that's been attending every year, and it's been amazing watching it grow and grow and grow, and how much bigger and better and more smoothly it's gotten each year. So let me just ask you this: when you first started the whole Ozark Mountain Nationals, what inspired you to start hosting your own tournaments?
Well, when I first started doing tournaments, actually, I'm part of a family of martial artists that do tournaments, and pretty much our martial arts expertise and what we specialize in has been on the sports side of things. And so for years, I've been with my family doing family tournaments and stuff like that. And then there came to a point that I wanted to see what I could do. I had some different ideas, and we were part of a circuit. And sometimes you're limited on what, maybe you have some personal ideas on what you would like to do or like to see a tournament grow on a personal level. And so at that point in time, I made a decision to say, hey, I want to go out on my own and see what I can build with some of the ideas that I have and see what I can construct as far as the tournament goes, and see how large I can get it, and see if I can introduce sport martial arts to other schools that maybe normally don't do it. And so that was kind of my idea, is to just basically implement some ideas I had to see what could turn out, just to say, hey, what can we do? Is there some different ways that we can do this and handle this, and can we make this thing grow with these ideas? And that was kind of the initial basis of how we got started.
Wow, what a great way and what a great philosophy on just wanting to make things better. So I'm just curious, because I didn't get this from you before this episode. Approximately how many participants and attendees did you have that attended the most recent Ozark Mountain National Tournament?
Well, we had right around 371 as far as that goes. But, the one thing, and that was actual competitors too. And I know there's different ways people count competitors. Sometimes people will count competitors based off divisions. They'll say, okay, we had 100 competitors, but we actually had 300 competitors because they all did 3 events. But what we actually had was 371 individual competitors come through. So that's not even counting how many divisions they had. It was actually 371 competitors that came through the door. In which, like you said, in 6 years, when we first initially started the Ozark Mountain Nationals, we started in a small gym in Ozark, Missouri. And our very first tournament, and this is probably being nice, we had maybe 50 competitors in that gym that day 6 years ago. So from 6 years ago, 50 competitors to 371. And the most thing I'm proud of is we had 70 different schools, whether if they just brought one person, 5 or 20, we had 70 different schools there on July 30th, which was something that I was really happy with, because I really am trying to reach out and network. So the variation of schools and styles was one thing that I really prided myself on.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, what a success story to go from 50 to over almost 400 competitors in only 6 years time. I mean, that's amazing. Kudos to you and all of the things that you do.
Thank you.
Do you know about how many states that those schools were from? You said it was over 70 schools. How many states came?
Well, we were tracking 7 to 8 states. We may have had closer to 10. We had a couple participants that were just like one or two people from like Tennessee and some different states like that. So between 8 to 10 states is what we were, primarily through the Midwest and southern region with some Texas, and as far as north as Iowa and Nebraska.
Wow, that's incredible. So tell me this, let's get down into kind of the nuts and bolts of how you got started creating your own tournament circuit. So when you first decided to put it together back 6 years ago, how far in advance did you plan things out?
Well, the first initial one was probably the least amount of work we probably put into one. When we initially decided to make a date, the one thing that's in trying to find a date or a time, in the Midwest, it is alarming how many open tournaments we have. And I'm not even including closed tournaments, which are just invitational only, but there's roughly 60 to 70 open tournaments in a 4-state area, which I would call the Midwest: Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri. So out of those 4 states, there's almost 70 different open tournaments. So the first initial one, we had to just find a weekend, and we had probably 3 months to prepare, and we had to find a weekend to put it on. And from there, choosing the venue, choosing a name. The thing initially was trying to find a vision. Okay, if we're going to start out with this tournament, where's it going to go? So the naming had to be a part of what we wanted to do as far as the vision of the tournament, how we wanted to see it grow. So location, trying to find the right weekend, trying to name the thing, and then going into marketing and promotion. So, it started out as simple things. Those are things that are initially the simplest things to try and figure out, but you have to figure those out early. And we started about 3 months in advance the first time we did it, and now it's a year-round deal.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you already talked a little bit about some of the steps, and that was one of the questions that I was curious about personally was, here you've got a tournament, especially in your first year, and you're going to rent out a space or a venue, and you're not even sure how many people are going to come at this point. What type of things did you consider when you were starting your first one on venue?
Well, and that's the thing, especially being with the independent tournaments. Sometimes, you classify tournaments. You either have an independent tournament, or you're part of a circuit or association, or you have an invitational tournament. I would classify it as those 3 sectors. And so depending on what kind of tournament you are, if you're an independent promoter and you're starting out on your own, again, you don't know how many people is going to wind up showing up to your tournament because you're starting from scratch. Like, that's basically what I did. I had to start from scratch. I left an organization that had competitors, and I knew that those competitors probably wouldn't travel over because they was already committed to that circuit. So I had to start from scratch. So the first thing I did was find, and typically most tournaments start in gyms. We found a rec center in Ozark, Missouri. We wanted to make sure expense-wise, we didn't, you definitely don't want to lose money on a tournament. You don't want it to become an expense. So we made sure that the budget was right as far as the venue goes. We tried to find a nice gym that had seating capabilities to be able to accommodate even a small crowd, up to, if you had more than what you expected, a little larger crowd. So you try and find a happy medium of a space that's not too big to where it looks empty, but a space big enough to handle an overflow crowd in case you do attract more than what you thought, that it would be able to handle that many people coming in.
Sure. So in your first year, were you anticipating 50 competitors, or what was your goal that first year?
Well, my first year goal, I had to be realistic. Again, I left an organization that had very good, strong numbers, and I knew a lot of those people from that organization would not attend my event because, again, there was other events that they had to do, and it's a budgeting thing too for people when they're trying to budget for a tournament. There's only so many tournaments that you can fit in your budget per year. And so I knew a lot of those people, so I didn't expect more than 60, 70 competitors at my first tournament. So we were just a little bit off on my first tournament numbers, but I expected it to be a low turnout. So I made sure I budgeted for that, for awards, venue, and tried to keep our overhead as low as possible because I knew we probably wouldn't draw very much of a crowd. And so we tried to keep it as low as possible. I really had low expectations, but every year after year, those expectations seem to grow and grow.
That's great. So I'm curious, this next year, you're going to have to get a larger venue because you blew out that one. It seemed like there was so many people there.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. We've got one more year probably to be able to stay. We're actually going to be able to expand 5,000 more square feet in that venue that we're in right now. And so the next year, though, we've actually got we're looking at either moving the event down to Branson, Missouri, down at the Hilton down there. We've already started scouting that area down there because I think Branson would be a great destination area. So we're trying to find some venues in that 30 to 40,000 square feet. Right now we're in a 20 to 22,000 square feet venue. And again, for those of you that was there or you got to see personally, that was very cramped for what the attendance was. And so we're going to have to start expanding to a 30 to 40,000 square foot complex to probably accommodate the numbers if they keep on the increase like they are.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's great. Well, we would love to have you down here in Branson because that's where our studio is located. So
Sure.
I like that idea. But for those of you that are watching this and you don't live anywhere near Missouri and you're wondering, I know we've got a lot of people that watch this show that are overseas. And I just wanted to share with you, we're located in Missouri, and Mr. Osborne here is located in Springfield, Missouri. But you could literally do a tournament on your own just about anywhere. And so we're just giving you some ideas today on how you might be able to start a venue in your location, no matter where you're located in the world. So some other questions I had for you, Mr. Osborne, is, how did you start promoting it? I mean, let's talk about promotion. What did you do? Did you create a website? How did you get those connections and get commitments from so many schools?
Well, initially starting out, the one thing I want to preference somebody, you got to have a vision or an idea of what you want to be. That's the biggest thing. Identify yourself as what kind of tournament you want to be. Are you looking to form a circuit? Are you looking to be an invitational tournament to where you're only going to have certain styles of stuff come in? Or are you going to be an open tournament, independent tournament where you're going to try and grow? And the biggest thing is there's a lot of work involved. Any like you said, any demographic or location that you are in any region, you have to work your immediate schools in your area. So the first thing I started doing was contacted Springfield schools within maybe an hour drive of Springfield, and then I expanded from there. Plus, I have an extensive travel schedule throughout the year. I visit anywhere. Well, this year my schedule got a little bit expanded more than what I thought. I'm going to be pushing the 18 to 20 tournaments this year, but usually 10 to 12 tournaments a year is usually what you want. You want to be somewhere about, once a month, going out and talking to schools and being very particular on who you attend. If you're only going to go, if there's, I'm just going to take my region as an example, and this is across the United States. I'm not saying the Midwest is only the one that has this problem, but there is a lot of tournaments throughout the United States. And so really fine-tuning where you're going to go. Are the tournaments you're going to go to going to be open tournaments? Are they, if you're going to be an open tournament, you got to find like-minded people that are going to want to attend your event, and then go to those events and work those events to be able to say, hey, look, I'm running an event. I want you to come here. Here's my ideas on what I'm wanting to do. What's your ideas on tournaments? And really networking and communicating with people that are like-minded. And so, like I said, my schedule got to expand a little bit, but the first couple of years I was hitting 10 to 12 tournaments in my region, and I selected tournaments that were the largest tournaments in different circuits. And I actually went and was almost like a talent scout, and I would scout for top talent in other martial arts circuits, and I would say, hey, look, you're a great talent. I would love you to come to my event. And from there, as a talent scout, is going around and moving around my region, schools that were like-minded, that liked what we were doing and our philosophies and ideas, and we attracted those schools to come in. It did take a few years for some schools to come, but every year I made sure that I was a presence in my region. And again, it's not my region, it's our region, but I made sure I was a presence in our region to people know what I was doing here in Springfield, and to make sure that I was going out and helping others too, to help their events too, to help build martial arts in general as far as the sports side goes. So definitely working in your own region, going to tournaments in your own region, and then expanding out from there. I travel to Atlanta, I travel to Minneapolis and Chicago, so I do outreach out there. But the best thing that I can tell people is to start in your backyard, start in your city or town, get people networking together that are at least open-minded to working with you, and then expanding from there.
That's great. You do a great job of networking, and not only, I think, physically networking with going to all these tournaments, but also online. I know that we were one of them that you reached out to on Facebook. I'd be curious on your Facebook strategy as to what you use in order to market there.
Well, it's the same way that I do for tournaments. I am constantly browsing throughout trying to find martial arts schools and trying to network with other martial artists. And sometimes I will look for schools that are already attending tournaments. And then I'll look for schools that maybe don't do a lot of tournaments, but maybe want to. So I'm constantly out there trying to scour the Facebook world, trying to look for schools. And I'm looking for schools that I would consider a small school. It could be a recreational program that has 10 students. It could be a mega school that has 400 students, and anything in between. I'm constantly looking for martial arts school within my region. And like I said, again, looking at the geography of the region and going, okay, how far is this school? Because usually, typically, every school on Facebook will have a map, or that person will be in the region. Is that a feasible drive for somebody to come to me? Especially starting out for a small tournament, when I only had less than 100 people, I wouldn't ask somebody to drive 5 hours to know that they're not going to have much competition. So I started out small. I knew what my numbers were. On Facebook, I would only scout schools that I know that could do a day's drive. And as I've grown and increased the competition, made the event larger, then I started to expand out 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. So not only was it just looking for martial arts schools on there, I tried to fine tune it geographically and say, okay, look, this school is within a few hours. This school is within a couple hours. This school is within 30 minutes away. And those are the schools I targeted first and then expanded. So the same way physically going out there and looking for them, I did the same way. I looked for key words: Taekwondo, karate, sport karate, Shotokan. I looked for styles. And then from there, I tried to go and go through those schools and make a list and start doing those schools and contacting those schools and seeing if they're even interested in open tournaments. And a lot of people don't ever respond to me, but the ones I do, at least I know have some kind of interest. And then we start a dialogue. And then some of those relationships have turned into friends that have been my friends for 5 or 6 years now. It's not just become the tournament. Now I watch what they're doing with testings, or I get invited to testings. And so, it really has evolved into something more than just the tournament. We've actually created friendships based off the tournament they're going outside of that. But that's what I kind of did with Facebook. I really targeted people that were, the geography of them being close to mine, and then expanded out from there.
That's great. I really appreciate you going into detail on that. I know that'll help a lot of people. Did you run any types of paid advertising, either online advertising or otherwise?
I did a little bit. It is fairly inexpensive, even for a martial arts school to run an ad, because you can set a payment. So if you're just trying to get initial exposure, like the Facebook ads, you can tell it what you want it to look for. If you've got people that have interest in karate, you can tell them that. If you're looking for an age demographic, you can do that. And then if you only set, I run probably about 4 ads a year, and I'll do it for a week in certain time periods of the year to try and attract people. The first of the year, a couple months before my tournament, a couple months after my tournament, and towards the end of the year. And I'll run a week ad, and I'll tell Facebook, hey, here's my daily budget. I want to spend $5 a day. And from there, you can increase your page likes. Page is probably key. Everybody can create an event page, but that event page will expire after your event. So one thing I've tried to do is create an actual event page, that is just a page and not the actual. I'm trying to clarify between the two. There is a page, and then you can have an event calendar, basically, that you can invite people to the event. But once your event is over, that page or that calendar will close, because you're inviting people to an event, and that will close after that. But what I've done is create a page that stays up year round, and that's what I promote to people to attract the brand awareness of the Ozark Mountain Nationals, and let people know Ozark Mountain Nationals. And then I get the date out extremely early. Like, I've already started promotion already for next year, and we've got our date out already set for next year. And so I'll begin that promotion within 60 days and letting people know what our date is for July of next year.
Oh, that's great. So I think what you're talking about is like a fan page, a business
Correct.
fan page.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Because the event, when you create an event on Facebook, it's just the event itself, and that'll expire once your event, is gone, when the timetable of your event's gone. But an actual fan page, you can interact with people all year round. And that's what you're trying to increase likes on. You want people visiting your event. You want people seeing what's going on. If you're posting pictures, if you've got a new date, venue change, you want people engaged year round, even though your tournament's gone and expired. You want people involved in watching what you're doing.
That's great. So, let's talk about pricing. I know that a lot of folks, they stumble on this. They don't know, how much to charge for setting competitor pricing and spectator fees. What would you recommend to a new, school or promoter that's getting ready to start their first tournament?
Well, definitely do your research in the area. The one thing that we have in the martial arts world is there is a huge discrepancy as far as pricing ranges go. For a national tournament, let me take the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open is probably one of the largest open tournaments in the United States. On average, if you're doing 2 to 3 divisions, you could spend $300 for competition. Now, granted, you're going to an international tournament, you're fighting international competition, one of the largest venues in the United States. So, look at your region. If you're just starting out as a regional tournament, look and see what other people are pricing in your region. And from there, basing your pricing off of what everybody else is doing. You don't want to go into it and just set some price that's maybe too high or maybe too low, because sometimes people do, as far as pricing goes, that is a big determining factor on whether they're going to come to your tournament. If your price is too high, you may drive away schools that maybe can't afford it. And then sometimes, with the pricing too low, sometimes people may think that, maybe that's not going to be a very big tournament because the pricing's so low. There's just different variables on there. I would try and find a good happy median range, and that's what I've done with the pricing on mine. Is there are others in my region that charge higher. There's others in my region that charge lower, and I'm right in the middle. But what I've tried to do with my event is try to offer more for the compensation that they're paying for the tournament. So venue, awards, cash prizes for black belts, even down to participation medals for people who don't place. So, what you charge as far as what your pricing is, it has to reflect what you have. If you have a smaller tournament, it's in a gym format, you don't want to charge too much. But if your expenses, if you're going into a nice big expo center and you're going to have lots of competitors and lots of awards, then it has to be comparable to that, but it can't be too high because you don't want to price yourself out of it then, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of a lot of variables in there, but really pay attention to what your region is charging. Every region is so different. The Midwest is not the same as the West Coast and East Coast. Down South is different. Even the Mid-South, it probably has about $15 to $20 variance on what they charge from what the Midwest charges. And you have invitational tournaments that are a little bit more expensive. So really look at your region and really price it off of what everybody else is doing and stay within reason with those prices.
Great advice. Love that. So, let's talk about tournament rules. What system did you base your rules on for, kata, sparring, etc.?
Well, the thing is that there are so many different rules. And honestly, that is probably the one thing that probably hurts our sport. And this is more of a philosophy thing. We have thousands and thousands of people that do martial arts. And our type of fighting is what we call point fighting. There are so many different organizations, and even traditional kata traditional karate that will be in the Olympics in 2020, they do a version of point fighting. So our point fighting, it varies from different sections of the United States or even the world. So there's different ways to do it. So what I chose to do was, the largest open circuit sanctioning body in the United States is called NASCA. That is the largest open tournament circuit that we have. And so my personal philosophy has to been not to create something that was way different than what NASCA was doing, because they're the ones drawing the most competitors in North America right now. So what we try to do is tailor our system based off of what NASCA rules are. Now, we've tweaked it just a little bit, but we've tried to keep our rules within the NASCA system. And that's the North American Sport Karate Association. So, and for those of you who are familiar with it, but anyway, so we've tried to make our rules based off of what the majority was doing. I didn't want to go off and create something new. That's one of the things I see a lot in sport martial arts. Everybody tries to go and create something new instead of what we have right now. If the bulk of the people are going one direction, let's try and fix that. If we don't like the rules, but maybe we can follow the rules, and maybe we can get an input to try and change those rules later. But let's at least get all on the same page. In a lot of different martial arts tournaments, whether they're open or independent or whatever they're doing, a lot of them are moving towards that kind of system. That way we all have some kind of continuity. That's the biggest thing that probably hurts our sport, is things change. I could go to a tournament in California, it can be point fighting, but it could be totally different rules than what we do here in the Midwest, but we still call it point fighting. Things that kind of hurts our sport sometimes is not having continuity as far as rules go. So what we chose to do was go with the largest open circuit there was and try to follow what they're doing within reason of our region. We tried to stay with those rules and regulations of what they do.
Yeah, that's good. I always wondered how that worked. So that's good to hear that you're using that. So do you, I'm just curious again, but did you have to get insurance to host the tournament?
I would strongly suggest it. Even though waivers are predominantly at martial arts tournaments, and we've even had a couple of instances where people have gotten injured, it's still a contact sport. Even though you try to make it as light contact, typically a waiver will hold up in court depending on how your waiver is structured. But I strongly guarantee getting, especially with venues and stuff right now, that is almost a requirement. If you're going to rent a venue, you must have some kind of liability insurance. So I would strongly suggest getting insurance. And typically insurance is between $300 to $500 for the day for $1 million policy. Now, I'm not an insurance guy. I couldn't tell you details as far as what the insurance policy covers, but a basic liability insurance coverage for the day runs you about $300, $350, and depending on if you want to expand the coverage, then it goes up to $500 depending on how much coverage you want. But if you have a strong waiver and you have an attorney, maybe an attorney friend, look at your waiver. Usually, typically waivers will hold up if anybody wants to, and I hope this never happens. I rarely in martial arts have I seen anybody try to sue somebody in a martial arts tournament for an injury, unless it was just something totally illegal and it was out of control or anything like that. But normal injuries do happen in martial arts events, and most people don't seek compensation because it just happens, because it is a contact sport and things happen. Knees, shoulders, things just happen sometimes. So a strong waiver and definitely getting at minimum liability insurance. And sometimes, like I said, buildings will require it. So it may be just something that you put a part of your budget to know that, hey, look, I'm going to have to come up with $300 or $400 for liability insurance, and that needs to be done within 30 days of the event.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. So I know in any big endeavor or event, it's definitely not a one-person show. So who did you seek out to get help in organizing your tournament? And then also just the jobs of managing registration, ticketing, judging, etc.
Well, first was to start in-house. First thing I had to do was make sure my parents, I am very blessed to have a very good, student-parent, involvement with my own school. So the first thing I had to do was find people that were in my own school to help volunteer, time keep, score keep. My wife runs registration. It is a family affair when it comes to my school and dojo. Now, as the years have grown, now I've got people that travel in for 4 or 5 hours that bring their kids and help us time keep and score keep. So primarily it's a volunteer thing to where you've got to have people. The one thing that we can't do right now with martial arts tournaments, because we don't make enough compensation, is to pay judges, to pay scorekeepers and timekeepers. I'm hoping that's something we can move to down the road. But right now, sport martial arts is based a lot off volunteers. But that's how most sports right now, the Olympics right now that are going on right now, there are thousands of volunteers that have to pay their own way to come to the Olympics, to volunteer to the Olympics. And so that's how the Olympics goes. If they didn't have the thousands of volunteers that fly into Rio, then there wouldn't have been any Olympics this year, because that's primarily all volunteers that help. So same way with our tournaments, volunteers starting in-house first, finding parents that can help you, help with registration, help with timekeeping, scorekeeping, and then start looking for friends in the martial arts community to help with judging. Would you help me judge this day? Have you centered a ring before? And just asking those questions and finding people. Again, it goes back to like-minded people. Surrounding yourself with people who see your vision and see what you want to do. Most people are willing. If they have the same ideas and goals as you, they want to help, because they know in return you're probably going to help them with something, and it'll just it's just like a constant circle. You're helping them, you're helping me. I help you, you help me. And that's how we built it. And it's built to a staff. I mean, we've had a staff of 50, 60 people with this last tournament helping us set up, run things, and get things going.
Great. You're so blessed to have so many people that help out, because I noticed that there always was somebody there volunteering, just at the most recent one. And I really was impressed with even paramedics. You had paramedics that were there, and I just thought that was incredible.
Yes. I am very blessed, and that's why I never use the word thank you. Cannot be a word that can be used. There is no quota on the word thank you, and I use it a lot, a lot. You can never use too many of them.
Oh, you do. And you're such a gracious host. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so glad you're part of our Marshall Way Network.
Thank you.
So what other special things do you do at your tournament that you believe sets it apart from other tournaments in the area?
Well, now I'm going to go into philosophy. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Here's why I deem tournaments to be so important. Throughout martial arts history, and I'm going to say the last 60, 70 years, a lot of what we get our history from, or our legends, or our people that are in movies, and our exposure to the rest of the world, or sometimes together, has all revolved around tournaments. Probably the biggest name ever was Bruce Lee. Everybody knows who Bruce Lee is. When Bruce Lee started his own system, the first place he went to showcase his system was Ed Parker's Long Beach Internationals back in the 60s. So when he first got his system, he went to the tournament to say, hey, look, this is where all the top martial artists are going to be, and I want to show you what I'm doing. It's not that Bruce Lee was into sport, martial arts, or anything like that, but he knew to get in front of the top guys, he had to go to Ed Parker's tournament. Again, another name, Ed Parker. He's synonymous for movies and Kempo and being the father, of Kempo in America. But his involvement with sport martial arts was huge. He had the first big international tournament in the United States. And so what I'm trying to keep it short, but I probably go on for hours about this, is that our legends and our people, Joe Louis, who's passed away, Chuck Norris, a lot of our people that we do are Bill Wallace, who everybody probably in the United States has heard of the name Bill Wallace or done a seminar with Bill Wallace. Well, where did Bill Wallace come from? He come from sport martial arts. And so a lot of people and a lot of influences have come from the sport realm of martial arts. And so the thing is that we've been so far spread out over the years that, back in the day, there was only one place you could go to do tournaments. Like in the Midwest, you had maybe 10 tournaments. That's where everybody went, whether you were Shotokan, Taekwondo, didn't matter what system or style you were, everybody went to the same place. Now everybody started their own tournaments. You have different organizations, different sanctioning bodies, and there's nothing wrong with that. Variety is fantastic. But the problem is we've gotten so separated that we're not all together anymore. So my philosophy and idea was to start getting people to come back together again. And to get to school, some schools even just said, you know what, we don't even want to do tournaments anymore. We didn't like the way they were going. We didn't want to do them. We didn't want to be a part taking them because we just didn't like them. They weren't fair to everybody, or they weren't, they weren't ran well. And so I took all this stuff and I said, well, you know what? I want people, even if they only go to one tournament a year, I want them to be able to experience it. And I want them to experience it on a level unlike anything else. I don't want to even call my tournament a tournament. I want to call it an event. It is a social networking event. It is also a tournament too, but it's fair to any style or system that comes in. And so I took all these things of how important I think martial arts is, sport martial arts is, and how it could be a networking thing and how it could be a way to test students. But at the same time, I had to make sure it was something so glamorous and so unlike anything else that people would want to come back year after year. And I would get schools that maybe don't do a lot of tournaments and they'd want to participate just to be a part of it, to meet the other people and to see the talent and to be involved. And so all those ideas are what's kind of formed and shaped what we've done with the Ozark Mountain Nationals. We've got some schools that come to my tournament, they only do one tournament a year. But from that one tournament a year, they've been able to meet other schools and be able to network and do other things above and beyond the tournament. So the tournament is just a small portion of it. People networking, getting together, and finding other martial artists that are like-minded or do the same. Maybe they even found somebody that even does the same system as them. They had no clue they were 3 hours away. There's just so many different things that tournaments have that is so important and vital to martial arts over the last 50 to 60 years that I think that's been forgotten. And plus just participants. I think soccer right now is probably soccer, football, baseball. Those are all the mainstays. But if you took all the people that compete in sport martial arts, we would probably outnumber some soccer and football. If you actually took the number of participants, and there are thousands and thousands of people that do sport martial arts throughout the United States. But we're something that are an activity that just gets pushed to the wayside. We're like, listen, nobody does sport martial arts. Well, yeah, there's thousands of us that do it, but they just don't know that. And I think also as a goal of mine is I want to be able to show the mainstream. Now, granted, the Olympics going with 2020 in Japan, that's going to showcase, even though that's not exactly my system or what our tournaments do, but that's going to give people a chance. With Olympic Taekwondo, that helps out too. But, I think more exposure to what we do and how many people do this and the talent level we have. And so, but anyways, that's what kind of the premise is of what we're doing and what is involved in the idea and philosophy of what we're trying to do. I know that was a long answer, but I try to include everything of where I'm coming from.
That's perfect. I really appreciate you going long on that, because I think so often we forget what the true vision is of what you're doing and what other martial artists, sport martial artists are doing out there. So appreciate you sharing your viewpoints on that. So here's a good one for you. What are you hoping to do in the future for your Ozark Mountain National Tournament?
Well, the one thing, one small vision I would like to have is I would like to bring a big event back to the Midwest. It's been many years since we've had a true national event. And even though I call it the Ozark Mountain Nationals, I named it the Ozark Mountain Nationals to anticipate growth. It's not a true national tournament because I don't have coast-to-coast people. So, I do have self-awareness on what my tournament is. So, but we are going to get there. And that is my goal, is to bring an actual. And the other thing is too, is to get people excited. There are a lot of people that are that do martial arts in our region, and sometimes they just don't get excited or hyped up about tournaments. And I want this to be the event that everybody, when you leave my door, I want you to mark it on your calendar as soon as you walk out the door. And that's even for the child or kid or the competitor that got last place. They had such a fun time. It was such an event that person wants to come back year after year. That lets me know even a person that gets last place wants to come back because it's such a event that they want to be a part of. And that's what I want to do. I want my sport to grow too. We've only got one tournament right now that goes on ESPN. And so my vision is to show the rest of the world what kind of talent, what we have. When people see a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fighting in the UFC or a Venom Page in the UFC, they're like, man, these guys are such awkward fighters. How do they learn to fight like that? Well, that's sport martial arts. That's what we see every single day. And that's where they learned it from, was what we do. And then granted, that's, the cage fighting, everybody has different philosophies on that. But I'm just saying that we have something that is very, very precious in this. It's not just about, sport, as far as in general goes. Martial arts is such a life-changing thing. Sports, martial arts is a part of it, but people need to see what kind of community we have. And I want to be able to show the rest of the people. That's why I do so much YouTube stuff and streaming and stuff like that. I want people to see how exciting and what we've got, and I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to showcase it with my tournament.
That's awesome. Well, we're just about wrapping up here, and my thoughts were, do you have any last words of advice for other martial artists who want to start hosting their own events or tournaments?
Well, the biggest thing right now with me, I'm on a youth movement. And for those of you that are younger martial artists, the one thing that we need is we need our youth. We need younger people getting more involved with martial arts, whether you're starting your own school, whether you're helping judge, whether you're a young promoter just starting out. A lot of us are starting to age, and we're getting up there, and so we need the next generation to step up. And that's the one thing I think that we've had lagging here in the last 10 to 15 years are younger promoters wanting to establish the sport and continue what we're doing. So I encourage those of you, if you're a younger person, male, female, does not matter. Okay? We need you. We need you. We need you more than ever. We need you guys out teaching. We need you guys out participating. If there's anything that's going to carry on as far as tradition goes, you have got to be the ones that carry it on, because we can't do it forever. And so I have really been on a youth movement to get younger judges, to get younger promoters to start establishing tournaments that for the next 20 years, they'll be the tournament. The Ozark Mountain Nationals won't last forever. I won't be around forever. And so I really want to encourage young people to look or explore and start out small. And, the one thing I offer, I don't ever charge for a service or anything like that. And even through I don't care what part of the country you're in. If you see this and you need help, I'll give you my personal cell phone number and I will help you. I will help you any way I can to help you establish a tournament in your region, a circuit, whatever you want to do, just to help encourage the sport to live on. So my biggest thing is that we need to get younger. We need to get more people involved to be able to carry it on for the future. 20 years from now, your students need a place to go, and you're going to be the ones that provide that. So I definitely want to see the future. Right now, I need to see those guys step up and the younger guys help us out.
What a great message. Well, Mr. Osborne, thank you for all of the golden nuggets that you dropped. Actually, I would say golden bars is what you dropped today. So if there's anyone out there that, really was looking for, help and advice on starting their first event or tournament, I think this is a great episode for them to get that information. So thank you for your time today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, and I appreciate you as always. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next episode of Marshall Way Network.